Wow, Sina.
Another day, another dollar I'm saving just to be broke. They said college was serious, but my degree feel like a joke. 4 years or less, I'm saying I got it done. No playing, just to end up at my mom's after I told her I wasn't staying. Well, here we are. No question, I'm a star. Just got some light years to travel, but it's just so far. But I'ma make it though. Make sure you get your focus right. You coming too, it's about to be one hell of a ride. Yeah, this adults and stuff is crazy. They ain't warned us about this. I'm supposed to live my best life on an unpaid internship. I'm supposed to find my husband. Everybody running game. I guess the more things change, the more they stay the same. Went from worrying about on flow to running from Uncle Sam. Now I understand why student accounts never gave a damn. Saving accounts be slipping, trying to work out, but I'm tripping. I forgot health insurance. Oh, I'm my mom's until I'm 26, so I gotta pay these student loans. That's adulting. With the score doing the most. That's adulting. Moving out of mom's house. That's adulting. But it's all gonna work out. That's adulting. I need a legal side hustle. That's adulting. Cause these bills got me in trouble. That's adulting. Journey's course is never planned. That's adulting. Just leave it in God's hands. Cause that's adulting.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the School of Life podcast. I am so excited today, and y'all know I say that every episode, but I really mean it today. I have a new setup because for the first time in my YouTube atmosphere, podcast production space, whatever we're calling this thing, I have a guest joining me. Y'all, I am truly humbled by today's episode because not only do I have a guest that I've kind of known for maybe 5-6 years now, but we're talking about something that is so important to me, so important to this guest, and quite frankly, so important in the grand scheme of adulting, growing, understanding who you are and what it means to really show up in this world. I am not going to run my mouth for too much longer because I'll just get into all of it. And I want to bring my guest on so we can get into this good conversation. So without further ado, y'all already know the drill. Grab your note-taking tools. I got mine. School of Life is now in session. We here.
We are here.
Welcome to the couch.
I'm on the couch screaming.
Friends, as I shared in the intro, I have a special guest. I want to let him introduce himself because I will not do it justice. But what I want to share about me and this guest is that we went to college together. Let's start there. And this conversation came about because of an Instagram post that you made.
Yes.
So tell the friends how you know me, how I know you, how we got here, and what this conversation means today.
Wow.
And who you are.
I'm screaming. My name is Obaba. My full name is Babatunde, but most people know me as Obaba. As far as, how this space came about, I graduated last year after about, 10, 11 years of going to school, getting my degree from Delaware State.
Go Hornets.
Go Hornets, screaming. And it just took a long time for me to finish my degree program, and some things that kind of sort of were a reoccurring theme in my entire matriculation were like identity issues. And there was something that I really identified that I needed to accomplish and kind of sort of master as time went on, so that I would be able to, show up as my best self and build relationships with people like you, even after we left our collegiate space. So, in essence, it kind of sort of has snowballed to me, having some personal wins and some professional wins. And in essence, it's a nice to, benchmark and have those conversations about what that got me to and stuff like that. So.
I love it. So we met in college.
Yeah.
Baba took the scenic route, but it's okay.
Screaming.
The scenic route got us to the couch.
I'm telling you.
And what we want to frame this conversation around today is his journey and how he has lived so authentically. I'm going to plug all his socials and everything at the end of the show. But he made a post, I think it was last year.
Yeah, spring.
Last spring, sharing just very candidly. I think it's one of the most candid posts I've seen you share on social media about how it took him longer to finish school because of some personal identity challenges that he confronted, overcame, and all the things. And so I literally DM him like, I need to have you on the show because people need to talk about this challenge. It's a real challenge. So let's start with, for the purpose of this conversation, let's define identity for the classmates. How are we going to frame it for them?
Well, identity it's a variety of things, if you ask me, but it really comes in regards to like your morals, your principles, your values, your sexual identity, your spiritual identity, your moral identity.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many things to me that really push into what a cohesive identity is for an individual. And it's something that you need to be in tune with. It's something that you need to be aware of. And it's something that you need to, stand firm in as far as how you develop and make decisions on a daily basis.
I love it. Take notes. Take your notes.
Screaming.
So I know you shared with me that you are Nigerian-American.
Yes.
And one of your first kind of identity challenges was, as a child, trying to understand, okay, I'm Nigerian, I live in America, my parents want this, I want that. Talk to us about that early moment in your childhood and that kind of being your first identity, I would say, challenge.
Yeah, it's a beautiful portion and piece of who I am. I definitely love, over time, I grew to love, being Nigerian, being African, being a part of the diaspora. But it was a challenge just as a young person. It was like my first like hiccup, or not necessarily hiccup, but it was the first time that I identified that like, there are certain expectations and certain cultural things that are normally expected. And, growing up traditionally Nigerian in that specific culture, but growing up in America, so being exposed to African American culture or to racism or to American tones that play out in daily society, is just a conflict. So like you have, in essence, as a young person, the space where like you being raised one way in the house, but you go out into society and it's another environment completely. So how do you survive? That's the first time that I think I had a understanding in my head that like I might need to, and this was young, honestly, now that I'm talking about it, like 5 to 7 to 8, like when you're young and society makes you know it, that like you are African, booty scratcher and all the things.
Don't take us back.
You know what I'm saying?
But they like, used to say that.
That was the thing. But like you go home and you're supposed to take that and carry that with pride and go to school and be educated and make lots of money and change society. So like, how do you balance the two and weave and wobble in between the two was like my first real like life's challenge, in essence, of understanding like how do I stand firmly in all of these spaces, because it's going to be me showing up differently in all these spaces.
That's deep. One thing that I don't think, and maybe people are talking about it, but I don't think we're talking about it enough, is how we wrap our arms around children who are experiencing that. If there was a parent watching or a cousin, the rich auntie, what would be kind of one piece of advice you would give if they are seeing that their niece or child is kind of experiencing what you experienced at an early age?
I definitely would say stand firm in your backgrounds and belief while being warm to the understanding and expectations of new society, new conversations, and new spaces that people, especially our children, have to survive in and to be great in. So like, I'm never going to tell somebody that, you should change your cultural or your moral principles or standards when it comes to raising a child, even as a former educator. But it is nice to be aware of the environments and the surroundings that they are growing up in, so that you can advise them on how to not code switch, but in essence, how to be great in both spaces while not depreciating yourself, while not, really from an identity standpoint, having to like take an L on who you are just so that you can sustain yourself in somewhere else.
Oh, that is good.
Yeah.
I think that leads perfectly to what we talked about as you're growing up, that sustainability of like, who am I really? And you being in high school and having this conflict of, I'm into fashion, I'm into my culinary studies, but when I go home, my mom is like, you studying to be a doctor? Like, are you on the path that I want you to be on? Let's dive into that sustaining like who you are in the midst of being raised in a different culture, different household kind of dynamics. What was that transition like for you?
Wow. I'm screaming. So high school was like interesting because like in essence what you're talking about is you're talking about a lot of things here, and even as you say that like it opens my mind to a lot. But in essence, that was the first space where like I started to build myself up as somebody who had to sustain himself in different lanes. So like, yes, the teenage years came and like I kind of sort of went the non-traditional route, and my family cohort, like they weren't as heavily judgmental in regards like, oh, you need to be like a doctor, and it was like a forceful thing, because if it was that, then I wouldn't have been able to champion the path that I did. So much respect and grace to my family to still in essence like hear me out and allow me to still go the artistic route. But the expectation was and is that like you're supposed to be doctor, lawyer, or engineer, whatever the case may be. So growing up, when you start like being the fashion guy and the cooking guy and the artsy guy, and like at that time it wasn't really realistically understood like how could that be a successful career path, or how could that really be something that could get you to be sustainable for the rest of your life. And I in essence kind of sort of took that space and understanding that okay, like this is completely different from what is the standard and what is the expectation. And that is heightened when you from an African diaspora. So early on, like 14, 15, that's when I really like started working in a specialized fashion in culinary arts, because I knew I was like, all right, if you're not going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, like you got to bust your butt, like in culinary arts, you got to be the best, you got to be award winning, you got to have all, like whatever it is, because that's the only way you could prove to your folks and your people at home that this is something that you could be great at, and this is something that will allow you to be great. So I kind of sort of championed through that process. And by the time high school came up to the end of it, I kind of sort of found myself juggling two different narratives, and I was kind of sort of ready to go down a specific rabbit hole of I really want to figure out if the arts and creativity and hospitalities is really what I want to do. And I had been working in hospitality since I was 14. I was working in retail since I was 16. So these were all things that I was very passionate about. And college kind of sort of provided that gateway and avenue for me to escape. And it literally was a feeling of escapism, because I was like, yes, like I finally, I can go to college, I can go away, and I can be myself, and I can figure out like what is my yes, what is my no, like who am I outside of what the guidelines of being like a young African male and somebody who's supposed to just grow up and be educated, having family and settle down and pay bills. Like that wasn't exciting to me at like 17. Like I was listening to Lady Gaga. Like, it just wasn't. It was just that ideology at that time wasn't traditional, and for a lot of young, I think not African Americans or first generation Africans that are now living in America, it's all kind of sort of the same mindset, is that everybody wants so much more, and not that there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so much more life and opportunity, so why not chase after it?
I love that. Before we hop into college, because I know college is where we're gonna get deep. We're gonna unpack some things. In high school, I know when we talked, we had a conversation around you're balancing these two kind of. I want to be successful in my culinary studies. I want to be the best. Did you ever feel a disconnect in high school?
As far as I felt like I had a few disconnects.
Okay.
And it was more so like, because everything wasn't genuine and synergetic, because it was so compartmentalized. Like I'm like the African Nigerian son here, and then in school like I'm the funny fat guy, and then creatively like I'm into fashion and the arts and hospitality. So there was and then academia wise, like I was always smart, but if you don't have a direct passion to want to achieve in certain lanes, that you're not going to push yourself, at least back then. So like I had great grades in like my cooking classes and my electives, and I would be in honors classes. That's the crazy part. Like real life smart, but like I would still get like C's and stuff in English, but I know how to bust down a paper and do all the assignments and stuff. But that wasn't my passion on some like mad scientist type of stuff. Like I was worried about culinary arts and going to a culinary school and being a chef at the time. So I realized that kind of sort of was a separate space from like my fashion space, where I would go to the fashion program after school and we would do the fashion show, and I would show up in those spaces, or I would show up in the culinary spaces. So it more so was the first space where I knew that I could pick and choose where I could put my energy and my gifts and my talents to. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, you know, as you grow up, because it's like you're picking and choosing where you're putting your energy and your efforts. But in order to really be successful, you need to put your energy and your effort towards everything. So
that's perfect, because that leads us right to college.
Yeah.
That leads us to college. Now, classmates, make sure you're taking notes on the college piece, because we're going to unpack it right here.
Right here.
So you get to college.
Yes.
You get to Delaware State. What year do you enter?
2011, fall.
2011, fall 2011. And what is that first year like in college? Now that you feel free, you can do your thing, you can embrace all of who you are, or so you think at this time. What is that first year like? Especially for anyone who doesn't know, Delaware State is an HBCU. So we have to make sure the people know.
I'm telling you.
What's that like for you?
I'm screaming. Okay. Woo, child. 2011, Delaware State.
Child.
I'm screaming. 1200 North DuPont Highway.
Dover, Delaware. Is it 197?
19906 or something. I don't know. My license is still based out of there too. That's the crazy part. But man, oh my God. Freshman year was orgasmic. Like, and I think like it was everything that it needed to be for somebody like myself at that point in time in my life. You know, like when I got to campus, like it was very much like a different world, all them other shows like back in the 90s and stuff. And I'm African first generation. So like my parents went to college in Nigeria, but like nobody had went to college like in America. And my older brother, he went to Morgan for a few years, but it was more so like non-traditional, like in and out. So I was the first one that really went away to school, stayed on the campus, like did a twin bed thing, had to go shopping at Walmart down back in the day. Like, and it was just like a whole process that we as like first generation Africans like had to really like, all right, like this is what you do. This is FAFSA. This is it. And like to champion through that was amazing. So then, you know, when I got to freshman orientation, and the crazy part about it is, like, I just applied to Del State on a humbug, and then because I seen, like, the modeling video for Limitless. So I was really into, like, the urban modeling and the fashion thing in, like, high school. So, like, I just didn't care once I didn't get into the private colleges because I didn't have the grades. Like, okay, I'm not going to the Culinary Institute of America. I'm not going to Johnson & Wales. I'm not going to LIM. And I was pissed. But they all wanted, like, 3.0s. And I had, like I told you, I only had, like, mediocre grades. So I had a 2.5, so I didn't get in. And they all said that I should go to community college. And I was like, man, you want me to go to CCBC? Like, y'all tripping. Like, I'm Nigerian. It did not get bad. Like, you busted at the night. Like, it's cool. Like, all right, maybe I ain't got no papers, but you went to high school. You went to one of the top performing arts school in Baltimore County. Like, you need to try to make something of yourself. So I applied to Del State. I applied to Morgan, and I got into Del State. And I just went, all the money and stuff, we just championed through the process. And I got to campus. And it was bomb. Like, it was overwhelming because I just remember, like, being so absorbed by, like, the culture, the food, the different people from all over, like, the Northeast. Like, it was so, like, impactful at that time. And I was like, this is lit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is over. This is everything. Like, I've seen the modeling teams, you know, the Greeks is on campus. So you being all Joe with that. You got SGA, the girls was waving. It's giving pumping pageantry. Like, it just was like so, it was so everything. Like, I like Del State at that time was everything. Like, you had the nostalgia of like the people from like the 99 and the 2000s, but then you had the millennial children busting through. Like, it was just, it was a great time to be a Hornet. So, like, I just remember myself being like so sucked up and sucked into all of that. Like, it was no holds barred. It was nothing else. It was college boy, period. College butch queen. Like, I am in the field completely. Like, we in the dorms, then we outside the dorms. We had Taste Lounge. We had fried chicken Thursdays. We going to class in the BOA. We going to class in the Price Building. We have a model troop practice in Everett's basement. Homecoming fashion show. Homecoming show. We running for SGA. We going to all the interest meetings. We doing, like, what? we doing
all of it.
We doing everything.
Mixy is the word.
We were we were in the mix. We not paying $25,000 a semester to not be in the mix. And some people do that. But I got so smacked by the culture, I was like, let's go.
Yeah. Got it. Okay, so you there.
We're there.
It's popping.
It's popping.
You getting good grades your first year?
First year was amazing. That's the crazy part. So that's when I knew, like, all right, you still was like a smart African. Because at that time, I had double majored actually at the time in food and nutritional science and textiles and apparel studies. Nice. So the goal was to get 2 degrees. One was in food, one was in fashion.
Gotcha.
And I was overzealous, and I realized I was going to have to take like 18 to 21 credits every semester just to realistically graduate. Talking about fast. And basically, I got all A's that first semester. I made the president's list, 4.0.
Come on, Harry Williams.
Like, I'm telling you, intro to textiles, intro to food and nutrition, speech, the computer class, the intro to algebra class, all of those classes, I had got A's. And I never forget, I got a 4.0. My mom was so happy. She bought me a sewing machine for Christmas. She bought me a sewing machine for Christmas. And that was, like, really an emotional thing for me, too, when she bought me that sewing machine. And it really made me, like, tear up at that time because I was struggling for a long time to really make myself be seen. You know what I'm saying? As far as, like, my gifts, my worth, my values, my talents, and what that could potentially bring to the table. And like in high school, I did like a really impactful thing where like we broke ground on a new building that they was building for the high school. So we catered like the whole reception for the culinary program, and like we made the news or whatever. So like she had that tangibly to see like, oh my God, my son on the news, he did catering for like this thing.
Yeah.
So like when I went to college, that was like the next big thing besides like graduating high school, of course, is like, oh, he's got a 4.0 and he majoring in fashion, like whatever I need to do. And that really, at that time, she don't know this, but that really spoke to me and it really like made me emotional because like as far as you being like an African parent, and this is like what also helped me with my identity issues later on, like you got to understand a lot of things. So like as far as her being like an African parent and not really seeing and understanding fashion to be a sustainable way and measure, but like we had like ladies in our family who was like tailors and seamstresses and stuff like that. But like to really be like a fashion guy and to really like have a sewing machine and to really like be getting A's in construction classes, like that was deep to me. And now she saw me and to get me a sewing machine, I was like, oh mommy, like you doing your ones.
I love that.
So that really meant a lot to me. And that's what kind of sort of accelerated my desire to have like a strong professional and academic like course in college, even though I kind of sort of got lost along the way. But once I seen her see me and give me the sewing machine for getting a 4.0 my first semester, I was like, all right, bet. And I think actually it kind of sort of threw me in the wrong direction because I was like, all right, bet, now you need to do all the college things. Like, you need to get a 4.0, you need to cross, you need to be Mr. DSU, you need to do everything. Your mom needs to be up here all the time, like, be in the audience, talking about, that's my baby. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that was really motivating at the start. And it kind of sort of got me pushed in the right direction.
Okay, so that's a perfect transition. Mom comes in with the sewing machine. Shout out to Mom.
I'm screaming.
Hey, girl.
Hey, mommy.
She comes in with the sewing machine. Does that affirm you in terms of like thinking about how you're showing up, how you identify, what you mean to yourself? Does that one moment say, well, you kind of already said this. Does that moment say, I can do this. I am who I am, and I'm going to take this full-fledged?
Yes and no. Because it's like, you know, and it's so crazy because it's like when you're African, it's still such a strong expectation, you know what I'm saying? Like to be the best and all this other stuff, even when it's subtle and not really like stated all the time. So like when she gave me that sewing machine, I knew it was kind of sort of like, I see you and I acknowledge you. Like, I don't understand everything all the way and I'm not with everything. And that's not my job to, you know, challenge my identity to be able to be on the same page with whatever the hell you got going on up at Delaware. But I do understand good works is good measure. You know what I'm saying? So like once I kind of sort of saw that, it did give me the understanding that like the same thing for me as a mentor, you know, to other people, like you're not going to be on the same page with all the decisions or all the things that your mentees do or say or their decision making, but you can identify certain things that will, you know, benefit them, certain decisions that they make that are positive, or certain ways that they carry themselves that will move them in a higher and a greater capacity. So that was something that I definitely, you know, received from that moment. And it definitely motivated me to want to be stronger academically and to figure out in college what it really was that I was meant there to do and be.
I love it. Okay, so you get the sewing machine. You're like, I can do this. I'm going to be on
president.
Get the sewing machine. I love it because that is a defining moment.
But the crazy part is as soon as I got the sewing machine, I put it down. I was like, I want to be a stylist. Like, I'm not making these clothes.
Mom, you see what he's doing?
I'm screaming.
Where's the sewing machine
somebody, I gave it to one of my mentees. So she like a up-and-coming designer, seamstress girlfriend.
You paid it forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you alluded to... after first semester, you got your 4.0. You like, oh, now I need to do all the things.
Yes.
Talk to us about now feeling confident in who you are, how you show up, what doing all the things really meant in terms of like this interpersonal identity challenge for yourself. Because it sounds like up until this point, you good, you gravy, cruise control, life is looking good. You've, I won't say made it out because you didn't live in the hood, but you've gotten out of your parents' house, you're in college, and it feels like this freedom. But now you're chasing, bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
You're chasing, I'm going to call it the HBCU college dream.
Yeah.
What does that do to you?
So the crazy part is, and the way you described it is kind of sort of like, it's kind of sort of valid. Like in high school and growing up culturally, like I felt like I was playing basketball, like trying to alley-oop and score and duck and dodge and all this other stuff between all the different segments of my life that I was trying to figure out. So when I got to college, and it's even funny because at this point in time in my life, like I literally remember when she did get me the sewing machine, I was like, and I got the 4.0, literally it was like this. I was like, okay, bet. Like, and I turned up in school and it was so bad. Like, it was so bad. Like, I remember I was like, okay, bet. Like, I got a 4.0. Mother sees me, sewing machine, like, let's get it. And it's just, everything went downhill right there. And it was like,
at that very, got the sewing machine, downhill.
Downhill. Like, I'm telling you, like, you could go on my transcript over the years at Dell State and you see 4.0, like 7 A's. Then you see like all A's and B's. Then you see like all A's, B's, and C's. Then you see like C's and D's. Then you start seeing the withdrawals. Then you start seeing the F's. Like, you literally see me go through the depression and all the witchcraft, all the nonsense. Like, you see it on the transcript. And I think about it later on, like, damn, like, if only you was more, like, you did the best you could while you was going through these different phases in college, but if you could have been more affirmed in your decision-making and your identity and how you stood, like, you would have not been swayed so much in how you, in the ways that you went. And it was just tough. Like, I did, like, one thing that I do well is I pivot very well. So, like, after freshman year, I realized food and nutritional science wasn't the way to go because it was more so like being a dietitian and John Hopkins and diets and stuff. Like, it was just a mess. So, they suggested me to go to College of Business for the hospitality and tourism program, and that was really on par with what I wanted to do. So, then I realized, I'm like, okay, like, this is more so my stilo, and I was getting into that, but my first passion that was really sucking me up was the culture on campus. Like, I was really heavily into the modeling thing on campus. Anything that was fashion related, going to practice, fashion shows on campus, Delaware Fashion Week, tryouts, all the things, all the things. That was such a big part of who I was, while I was going to school. And then I realized that, I liked the more sophisticated, growing up through college, like, I liked the sophisticated appeal of being a part of Royal Court and SGA and being in Greek life. So I started, like, following those paths. Like, I started following people that were in Royal Court. I started following people that were in SGA, seeing what they was doing. I started following the different Greek organizations that I never was exposed to in my life because I'm African. And now I'm, like, obsessed with, like, what the hell the people got going on campus? Like, who having a little function, a little soiree, a little cabaret, a little shindig? Like, what is life? And I found myself, the priority of academia and what really is, even like as an African, the only reason why you even there in the first place, it just started, like, the priority of it started, like, notching down. While everything else kind of sort of started pushing up. And it's like, in academia, it's kind of sort of like easy to figure out what you want to do and then just make a decision. But in those other worlds, it's like a constant vortex of like trying to figure out what it is and who is like kind of sort of susceptible to like whose opinion, all these other things that impact and challenge like how you move in those spaces. So it definitely like caught me into a whirlwind of like really fast, like, all right, now you're going to be judged on how you look, how you appear, how you talk, how you walk, how you blink, whether it's because you on the runway, whether it's because you popping up as somebody interest meeting, whether it's because you want to be Mr. Junior or Mr. DSU, whatever it is. Like, if you think that you coming to college to be that girl or be that boy and show up and be popular and be mixy and have all eyes on you, then you need to be ready to stand up straight with your back. And that I was not ready for that in that capacity because I already knew how to deal with that. And I kind of sort of mastered how to deal with that in my younger years because, I just, compartmentalize myself and boom, we go off to college and we out. But now I'm at college and I can't go nowhere because this is where I got to go and this is where I want to flourish at. So how do I make that happen?
Pause there. You said something that I think brings us all full circle the grades started dropping at the
trickling like a waterfall. Oh my God, it was so
bad. The grades
bad.
started dropping at the same time that the chase for popularity started to rise. In both of those, where's your identity lying?
So at this point, the identity is like, it's a Venn diagram with the two circles in the middle part. So this is like sophomore, junior year. So like, also at this point in time, I'm going through dramatic weight loss as well.
Okay.
So like, I was obese as a child. I was 300 pounds. So maybe we could throw a little picture up in there. But I was 300 pounds, 12th grade going into college. And then like, I just had a lifestyle change. So I used to eat like 5 times a day in high school, at work, at school, in my culinary classes. And then when I got to Del State, I would just eat like 1 time a day. Realistically, I was like, you know, doing a lot more like partying, running around in the modeling team and stuff. So my nutrition wasn't a priority. And like, I think it was also just baby weight. But weight started falling off of me. I started feeling myself. I'm like, okay, like, I'm smaller now. Like, I'm mixing on campus. What's going on? And I just kind of sort of found myself in the space where it was like, okay, like, this is more important, and this is like something that I'm focused on now. And like, school is still good, but like, I saw myself just slipping. And the identity, as far as somebody who really is an academic person, somebody who's really a smart person, like, it almost like turned into like imposter syndrome, because I'm like not showing up in class no more. I'm not showing up academically no more. I'm not challenging myself no more, because I'm spending all my energy in modeling practice till 2 a.m. or I'm spending all my energy like running around trying to figure out like when the next Greek meeting is for this person, or trying to figure out if I can, whatever, you know what I'm saying, study abroad in South Korea, which is what I did, which was a blessing, but like still just being mixy in all these other lanes and not even just really focusing on the main thing that you're there for, and having that challenge of like, all right, well, you look over your back and it's like, oh, like, I'm here for my degree, I'm here for school, but like, it's like, no, like, this is,
I want these things.
This is moreover, like, I want this, you know?
So with that, so much going on at one time.
Yeah.
When do you have that first realization that, oh shoot, I think I've lost myself because I am not even focused on what I came here for. I'm trying to live in 2 different worlds. You got the Venn diagram. Like, was it a sit down with yourself and you like, look, Baba, you need to get it together? What happened? What did that look like?
So it was like early junior year.
Okay.
And I'll never forget this. So weight loss really started busting. I was Mr. Soft. I was Mr. Courtyards running for something. I was heavy in my little team, popular down sophomore year.
Yes.
And I had lost weight. I was feeling myself. And a lot of my friends, they wasn't like heavily involved in like SGA, like little pageants and stuff like that. All this stuff. Like, we was all just regular people from Baltimore, or like regular people that was like the fashion cool kids or whatever. So like, to be universally popular on campus is like a different dynamic than being like in a niche market popular. Like, we the cool kids in the fashion.
Universally popular.
I was screaming.
I was niche popular.
Screaming. It was one thing to be like niche popular. Like, oh, you were one of the SGA girls. Oh, you one of the ethnic girls. Like, oh, you one of the smart girls. Like, oh, but when I started getting universally popular and I started feeling myself, like, I'll never forget, it was one time, shout out to Hey Janae, my girlfriend. Hey Janae, we was leaving some party or something, and I'll never forget, we was going to her Saturn, and I think I had got into it with somebody, and like, at that time, I was like really arrogant in my communication and stuff, like, just real, like, whatever, real fierce. And I remember going off about this person that I was getting into it with, blah, 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 blah. And my girlfriend was like going off on me. Ooh. I'm like, how you going off on me?
Okay.
That don't make no sense.
She had to text you.
She was like, Baba, you turning into a whole other person. Oh, and I was like, I'll never forget them words. And I remember gagging in my head. I'm like, oh my God, bitch, what? I was like, girl, what did you saying to me? Like, and when you so like, when you in the middle of an identity crisis, or like when you so full of yourself, like you don't even like see what's going on, or you can't even comprehend other people's like viewpoint of view of what's going on, it's out of sight, out of mind. And when you're going through like different phases in your identity, the thing that people don't understand, like when you're a Renaissance person, when you're somebody that's like an elite individual in life, like you still have to put on that armor and go out in society and handle your daily business as a leader or somebody who, you know, paves the way. but you still going through behind that shield, like those struggles. So it's like, even in that moment where like I'm feeling myself, I'm highly recognized on campus, I'm universally mixy, but my real friend, my girlfriend that I used to be like in the dorm with in Tubman and Jenkins and stuff freshman year is telling me that like I'm changing or I'm losing myself. Like it hit me two ways, because like the empathetic and the real part of me was like, oh my God, friend, like what are you talking about? Like, is this really what you're saying to me? But the other side of me, like that power, like that other, not power, but like I'm just referencing the show, but like that, like Omaroska, that like, you know, like that energy that like you got to be on at all times. And like, I'm not even acknowledging this right now, girl, because you're delusional and crazy. How could you be talking to me about this? Like, that don't make sense to me. Like, I am normal. I am fine. I am fabulous. I have arrived. Like, what's wrong with that? And anybody that comes against that is a hater. But then like you take a step back and you look and it's given like, no, like she not a hater. Like you be real fierce. Like you real fierce. You slow down.
In that moment, did you tell her, okay, you right, friend, or it had to fizzle out and then you went back to her?
I think I love my girlfriend Janae because we so real raw and uncut with each other. And I think that I can't remember, it's too far gone. I think I do remember that specific point in the part, but I do remember like us, like we always have had like realistic and raw conversations with each other as we've grown through the years with our identity spaces. Like, what is our yes? What is our no? Like, what phase of life are we in? Like, how is that impacting how we make decisions and how we show up? So we always have those, and for like almost 10 years now, we've had those conversations. So I remember like going through that phase of life and being interpersonal and having, you know, outwardly like relationships in these subsets, in these niches, but still having to come back to my real friend and talk about that and be like, okay, like I'm going through this struggle in my SGA life, or I'm going through this struggle in my royal court life, or I'm going through this struggle in the part of my Greek life. You know what I'm saying? So like how am I showing up, friend? Or how do you see me showing up, friend? Or how do you feel like I could be better in spaces? Or do you feel like I'm giving too much of myself in these spaces?
Got it. I love that. We all need some good friends. So check us. Shout out to Janae. Hey, friend.
Shout out to Janae. Screaming.
So college is coming to an end, or at least the traditional 4 years. You doing everything. You got your hands in everything. Grades are severely down. They've fallen off the radar. It's time to graduate. What does that look like?
So I just want to paint the picture. College literally was like an Amtrak like train that was literally like, it got faster and faster, and it was like it literally was a story. I should write a book, but it literally crashed into like a brick wall. Like it was just so crazy how it all happened. But I watched myself go from like a naive young African boy who didn't know nothing about like college culture or anything to somebody who was completely obsessed with like Greek life, student life, HBCU culture, being skinny and fabulous, all these other like vanity-esque things that really wasn't giving me no fullness in my true identity. But it was things that it was easy for me to grab real quick and say like, this is who I am. So like sophomore year, like it started with like the soft identity challenges and stuff like that, like getting my feet wet. Okay, junior year, now we Mr. Junior. Now we like SGA heavy with the money and the budgets. We going to conferences. We really is the face of the school at this point in time. The pressure is getting worse. Like it was so bad. Like I saw myself, and like at this point in time, I'm still double majoring, but realizing that like it's not realistic for me. And the only reason why honestly I kept my second major, which was the fashion major at that time, was because I was getting an in-state tuition check to be in that program. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just fail out the fashion program, but at least I took all the classes to graduate with the minor and just keep it on there. But I'm over here failing classes down, but still like running around in the pageants, trying to be. I ran for the Delta Mr. EA, like I was in the pageant down. Homecoming fashion show came. We was running doing the HBCU fashion shows in DC and stuff. Got second place with Wesley. Like it was so much going on with the NASAP in Savannah State. Like went to the Kings and Queens connection. Like that third year, like it went from like, all right, you just getting your foot in the door. Like freshman year was giving like it's giving like boom, and the pressure was getting worse because it was like, all right, what's next for you? Like, and I think I just even remember the pressure of like, all right, well, this is the normal matriculation for somebody like yourself, for somebody of this stature that you're trying to build. So, like, why wouldn't you be Mr. DSU? Why wouldn't you be in at least one of the organizations? Why wouldn't you be suited and booted and slaying across this campus like any other HBCU great would? That's you, right? Mr. African, Mr. Babatunde, you know, and I used to, like, have those conversations with myself. I'm like, dang, like, that is me. So I do need to show up. I do need to go get my blazers. I do need to go get my pen. I do need to go get my sash. I do need to go to that football game.
Yeah.
And that pressure like forced and kind of sort of pushed me to make my academia go all the way down. And the climax was, you're trying to make Greek lines, so now you're going to interest meetings. You're trying to be Mr. DSU, so now you're going to all the preparatory things and all of the things throughout the whole year to get you ready for that, while still being Mr. Junior. You running for various SGA positions at the same time to boost up your resume. So whether it's you Mr. Republican Fashion or the Mr. Courtyards, a correspondence secretary, or you in the African Student Association, like, you're trying to do all these things to make yourself seem grander. And yes, you are a Renaissance man. And yes, you do in real life do all these things. And yes, in real life, your resume is goated. But what's the real reason, or what's the purpose, and what's the goal? Especially in this ninth inning, that you should be like on track to be like walking across somebody's stage. And you more pressed to be at an interest meeting and make sure that everybody getting your vote for Mr. DSU. All right, bet. And I felt like that was God putting me at the climax of my like identity crisis to be like, all right, figure it out. Like, you want to be here in this moment. I'm here, you're here in this moment. Like, you can run for Mr. DSU. You think like you slick, Rick, and you could be in these orgs. You feel like you could be the king of Delaware and the most fashionable guy.
Governor and king.
The most fashionable guy around. Like, and that's really beautiful. You really think that you're a king, like, in this whole space of it. So, like, all right, and that was the identity of myself at the time. So go ahead and do it. And I remember running for Mr. DSU and not winning and all that traumatic like stuff that happened in my last year, my first senior year, or like my junior year getting into my first senior year. And I was like, damn, like when everything hit the fan and I didn't win Mr. DSU, I ran out of money to go to college. So like I had to find other alternative ways to get money. I had failed like all of my classes that third year. So it was really crazy because I was trying to do all this stuff SGA wise, Greek wise, and academically. So like my grades had dropped so low by the end of the year. It was like, even if you would have got all these things, like you wouldn't have been able to even have flourished in it successfully because you didn't have the grades. Like I'll never forget when I lost Mr. DSU, like that thing, it was so traumatic. I had left out the the MLK when they announced it, and I busted out into tears at the Price building. Like I literally was like boo-hoo crying. And then like I got my grades, like at that point in time, I still had like 18 credits for the semester. I got like all C's and D's because I was running around like trying to be worried about who was having what on campus, fashion stuff, running for Royal Court. Like my priorities were all over the place. I'll never forget that third year. And that was the year that I decided like, all right, I really got to get this fashion stuff out the way and just focus on HTM. And when I lost, like my grades came out and I got like a 2.7 GPA that semester. And if you know, like, well, at that point in time, you had to have a 3.0 to be like Mr. or Miss DSU. And the crazy part was, if I would have won like the title of Mr. Delaware State, I would have still had to forfeit it because I wouldn't have had the grace to sustain myself in the position for the year. And I felt like that was really God like telling me like it was never your like anointing. It was never your path to actually be Mr. DSU, but it definitely was your journey and path to go through the struggle and the strain of campaign. I had an ice cream truck on campus. It was all this other stuff.
Yes, he did, y'all.
But like
ice cream truck.
That process would help me build and really put my hand out there and be brave and meet the whole campus community and really build in essence the identity that was already in me. So like it kind of sort of was like I was chasing all these things to kind of sort of give me an identity, whereas though like I felt in the end run, God kind of sort of was like, this is the process for you to develop your identity. And you got to figure out like, how do you make your decisions?
But this is not your identity.
Correct.
I love that. Wow. I gotta just sit in that.
Screaming.
I feel like, you know how Oprah be like, that's a moment.
No, for real. That was a real moment.
So you have this, we can call it identity crisis. It's your junior year, going into your senior year. What do you feel, well, you kind of hinted at this, but what is the biggest lesson you take out of that in preparation for now your senior year in terms of how you show up?
So I'm from Baltimore, so back home, everybody say like failure is not an option. Like finale, like that's a real like some hush. Like failure is not an option. But what happens when you fail? And what happens when you fail like dramatically, publicly? What happens when you fail like when you fall like in the eggs is like it's cracked and sizzled? Like I ran from a city issue in front of this whole campus community. I failed. Like everybody knew I was pressed to be in whatever Greek organization, and I was not on that line humping and stomping. I failed. Like y'all, I was a failure. I failed. And that was the first time, like in high school when I didn't, it keep happening in like subsets in each like space of my life where I have an identity crisis, where like a massive failure comes because I've tried to reach for, in essence, a piece of identity or whatever that I thought would be like something that would sustain me. Like in high school, I failed at being a chef, and God blocked there. Like I did not go to culinary school. In college, I failed at Greek life and supreme like royalty and rulership of my university. So like that senior year, I was like, okay, well, I ain't got to lose. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a failure. So, like, I could just focus on, like, what is really my gift and talent, my bread and butter, which was the modeling team. And that was the year I was president. That was the year that we became award-winning and all this other stuff, which was amazing. But it took, like, a massive failure for me to really realize that, like, I really don't have to, you know, focus on 10 different things that's not really me. Or I don't really need to strain myself or push myself to places and spaces that is not really, like, giving me the return on investment or is just is invested in my development. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a real thing. And that year I kind of sort of just like I operated like a hermit crab. So I sunk in, like I was not pressed about nothing. Like I did men's counsel real quick. And it was just limitless. And I was like, you know, let me just be focused on developing my fashion mentees, the people that really see me, the people that really value me. Because I tried to go on this crusade for 2 years of trying to push into all these spaces where people, you know, I had to prove myself. And I'm like, you're like anointed, and you know, a Renaissance man is supposed to be like the next Oprah. You don't have to prove yourself to nobody. And that's what the campaign process like taught me when people saw my worth and value like in that space. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like, you know, you don't just see me from a mile away because I'm tall and I dress well. You see me because I'm a person of substance and I'm a person of value.
I love that. I love that. So many lessons. I think the one thing that I don't reflect on enough is, yes, you learn in college, you meet people, you get your degree, but there are so many small life lessons that you are almost forced to learn that you then carry with you throughout your life. And obviously this is one of them. So I'm thinking about that. Talk to me about, you had that experience, you took the scenic route, finally getting the graduation, you did it, congratulations.
Thank you. God bless.
Now that we're adulting, you're out here, you're doing the thing. How have you taken those lessons and applied them into like where it really matters the most in this crazy adulting life?
Okay. So at this point, I got to DC in 2016. So I believe I was like 23. 7 years, 23. And at this point in time, if you can keep up, we've had a few identity crises.
Yes.
We've had a few identity crises, you know. But we managed, you know, God is good. And that's the constant narrative, is that we pivot and we make it through, we figure it out. So I'm like, all right, bet. Adulting, DC, let's get it. Let's do that one. Let's do that one. I'm so ready. So I got a job in education, and I could have either chose to move to Philadelphia with City Year in America, or I could have moved to DC. And a lot of people from my modeling teams were from DC and stuff. And I had kind of sort of been familiar with Philadelphia just from college, you know, because we were close, because we were from Delaware. So I was like, you know, DC is, you know, it's giving all what. So, you know, I'm like, let's go to the city. So when I first get to DC, like, it's overwhelming. And that was like another identity crisis that I wasn't, and it's not necessarily always an identity crisis, but sometimes you just have to learn how to operate and move and how to shift in different environments that you're not used to. Because, like, I'm from Baltimore, but I'm from Baltimore County. Like, I'm going to keep it real, okay? Very much county boy, clean nails. It's giving, like, PG. So, like, it's not giving, like, The Wire. You know, that's where we go to, like,
make it clear.
That's where we go to, like, date and, like, you know, prance around and, like, shoot guns, whatever. But we very much are from the county. So, like, Southeast DC was, like, so life-changing as far as, like, just a culture switch. Because, like, and that's just, like, I had never lived in the ghetto, and I had never worked in a ghetto. So, like, I'm from Chicago originally, from Country Club Hills, which is what they call the South Side suburbs. Okay. And then we moved to Maryland, like, when I was 10, we moved to Baltimore County. We lived, like, all over the county. So, like, Randallstown, Pikesville, Owens Mills, Newtown. So, like, after that, I went to high school in Townsend by Townsend University. So, going straight to Del State in Dover, Delaware, and then going straight to Southeast DC was like, oh my God, like, where's my bag? Oh my God.
Let me get out of here.
And the first year, like, definitely was very instinctual. And I remember, like, like I told you when I was younger, like 5 or 6, like those initial feelings of like sustainability and having to figure stuff out, you know. So even though I wasn't like an African who was born in Africa and had to come to America and figure it out, I still, like, in America so many times over and over again in my life had to figure it out. So like I'm in Southeast DC, like, what? Like, the girls is getting shot, the girls is getting killed, it's giving rat-tat-tat, and like, mind you, the Banshee side of me mildly lives for it, so like that part of me was like thriving, but like the suburbia, like kind of sort of greener side of me, who always just thrived in safety nets and like academia, was very much like aloof. I didn't know how to thrive in a big city like that. I didn't know how to, and not even necessarily a big city, but I didn't know hood shit, street code, period. Like, I just was green as a motherfucking leaf. And I think that when I got to DC, like, also that was very intentional. I feel like God sent me there too. He sent me to work in City Year. He sent me to work in them hood ass schools. He sent me to work with them children for a variety of reasons, so that I could grow up, I could be a man, I could gain all a variety of life skills, I could gain street skills. Like, I gained all of that when I first got to DC, but it definitely was like a culture shock. Like, oh my God, like, and I didn't have the privilege. Like, some people move to DC and it's really great and fabulous. Like, some girls move to DC and they got their coin, they got their job, they moving into a condo. They don't have to worry about like the struggle of living on the South Side or living in an impoverished lifestyle. Because you can live in the South Side in a fabulous condo. So let me not even say it's just about living in the Southeast, even though the South Side is more bangier than the other side of town. But I was a volunteer with AmeriCorps in City Year. I was making $600 as a living stipend every 2 weeks. So I was staying with my girlfriend off South Capitol at the time on Southwest, where they banging all the time. And then me and my homeboy finally got a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,200 on the corner of Barnaby and Chesapeake, in the middle of Ward 8, like around the corner from Park Middle School, around the corner from Ballou, like down the street from Eastover. Like, it was so ghetto, but like it was my first like apartment, so like it was my it was ghetto fabulous. Like it was like so amazing, but like I had to quickly learn, like, all right, like, this is how you get an apartment. This is how you ride the metro. This is how, if you broke, this is how you skip the metro. This is how you talk to the police if you got to deal with the police. And because like you have to live in Southeast with these people because you can't afford to live in Northwest. Period.
And
like,
was that a humbling moment?
Yes, in a variety of ways, because like in college, I had to kind of sort of, you get the safety net in college. Like, I had to figure it out in college, like living in the courtyards and stuff, making sure my rent was always paid. But you still had the safety net of it being a school and still kind of sort of being a kid. And I didn't have like a high school like sob story of like, all right, my mom kicked me out. It got a little hot at certain times.
Come for the sob story.
Yeah, it wasn't giving like, my mama kicked me out. I had to get an apartment when I was 15. I had to figure it out. Like, thank God for mom. Like, it's giving prom. Like, it's giving prom real bad. So like that was a blessing. But like, that was the first time in my life where like I was really outside and had to figure it out. Like, I need to go get food stamps. Like, because I it's giving basketball wise, I had never seen a food stamp. But like living in DC, making $600 every 2 weeks, and I had to go transfer my job from Charlotte Russe and go work at the National Harbor, and I had to go get a server job, and I was working with After School All Stars doing aftercare. Like, I never had to get on my bully so hard until like when I first moved to DC, because like I realized I was like, all right, and I still didn't have my college degree. That was the whole gag behind everything. So I knew like I really need to work hard, like, to be able to make anything shake, because I'm completely out here on my own. There's no safety net. There's no none of that. So like once I kind of sort of realized that, and I also realized that I was going to have to deal with the fact that I'm going to have to teach myself and go through the experience of living in an at-risk community, living amongst the trenches with my students in essence, and like figuring that lifestyle on a daily basis, which is something I was never like used to. It's like it was life changing. Like, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you made it out.
I mastered it.
You mastered it. So, what was the as we prepare to wrap up? This has been such a great conversation. What was the mindset shift in going back to Del State, but not physically, but deciding, look, I have to get this degree. I don't care that it's been X number of years, but who I am and how I show up in the world is contingent on me finishing that degree. What was that mindset shift like? So
the shift was the same thing that happened, and I guess I can say that looking over my life, I have go through patterns and cycles and stuff. But the same thing that happened in college happened when I got to DC. So like, you green, you just stepping into it, you don't really know what's going on, and then you start to look for those identity pieces to latch onto that make you feel comfortable, because like we feel comfortable in our identity as human beings. So like when I first got to DC, I latched into like the young professional identity. So like I needed to be moving up everybody's corporate ladder. I needed to be having a fabulous job at all times. I leaned into like the urban modeling community. So like I needed to be a part of a fabulous modeling team. I need to be on all the runways. I need to be shady. I need to be reading the girls. I need to be it's an extension of college. So I need to be now further fierce. Like I need to be more fierce than I was in high school, because like that's what fierce people do. Hello.
Yeah.
Like, so like you lean into that space, you lean into the young professional pressure, you lean into the financial pressure of making sure that you make it as much money as possible, and that you could put your chest up, whatever the case may be. Even me, like working out and stuff, like you lean into the fitness pressure of living into a city that like where everybody's hot and everybody got body, or whatever the case may be. So like you should be hot and you should be having body, and if not, then you shouldn't have a seat at the table. And like you should feel that and know that and understand that, and you don't feel like you have worth and value and all that other stuff if you don't really, and you might not think like that way, but you don't really identify that. And I was moving in that space where like I first got to DC, I was a teacher, I was an educator, I was rocking and rolling for a couple years. And then I found myself like just not really being focused on like my job hustle. I started working like part-time jobs and stuff. I was just more worried about, like being an it girl, being a socialite, being outside, doing my ones, whatever, like just being outside. Like that's just really what it was. I was outside. And, I still was fabulous. I still made sure my rent was paid. I still went through the life lessons of figuring out how to make life work. So like that was a blessing. I'm always gonna figure it out. But I found myself wasting time, and I found myself like just not really being focused on certain stuff. And I was like, Babatunde, like you moved to DC in 2016 to finish your degree. Period. That was the only goal. Like you not from DC. Like like South Side. Like it's busting. You like I love the hood. Like it's so terrible. But like I love the South Side, and I love Southeast. But you did not move to DC to turn into a Southeast slayer. Like you did not move to DC to be on
here with a mission,
to be going to Hackett Jamal and to be on Bennett Road and to be on the K. Like that's not why you moved here. So like I really just got remotivated. Like after a couple of transitions happened with like just different friend groups and stuff like that. And I kind of sort of found myself like saying to myself like, all right, you about to be 30, like, and you be pressed all day to be outside and be taking trips and all this other stuff. And the stuff that you really moved down here for, you haven't really like paid any attention to it yet in a few years. So like you need to make that happen. So like I found just some opportunity for me to not be worried about like my professional life, not be worried about my social life, not be worried about my romantic life. And I was turning 30 and I was like, Babatunde, enroll back in school, make some tough decisions. You might have to move back home or whatever the case may be, but you need to finish and get your degree. Like why you outside being pressed to be a social life? Why you at Natalie's and you don't got your degree? Let them other girls be at Natalie's. Like no, like enough is enough. And I kind of sort of had that like light bulb go off one day last year, and I was like, all right, Mom, I'm coming back home, I'm enrolling in school, I'm finishing up my last class, let's go cross our fingers and we're gonna do what it do. And that motivation really like it just like, and my last piece behind that was like I was talking to God, I was like, God, like I want a job, like I want a real grown job now. Like I've put my work in the DC professional world. Like I want a remote job, I want a job that's like sophisticated, I want a job that's like I can build off of, and that's going to look real substantial on paper. And as soon as I moved home, all of that stuff happened. And I'm like, I'm so spiritual, but like I really don't lean into it as much. But one thing that I do identify is that like when you ask God for something for like a long season and you really like put all the work into it that he kind of sort of lay out for you, whether you even know that you're doing it or not. Because a lot of times when I make my decisions and I be following like the path that God laid out for me, like I just be doing it just because like it just makes sense in my head. But then like also it do then resonate inside me. So then I'd be like, okay, like yeah, like this is the way I should be going, or this is the way that I feel like something is going to transition and help me into the next season, even if I could see like the full capacity of it or not. Like after 7 years, like I felt like, okay, I'm a fab girl. I've slayed DC. It's not one stone I haven't unturned. Like, yes, I could stay in DC and continue paying rent and being fabulous and finishing out my degree program. But like, you need to do this first thing. If you want to move to, another city, if you feel like 7 is the number of completion, if you feel like God is talking to you from all these different avenues, then like take that that linear step of faith and remove yourself from what you're comfortable in and what you think is your identity, what you think is you being a professional and having an apartment and having a car and being the girls and being able to bring anybody home and be able to pump up in a fashion show. Like that's cut for the girls, but like that's not really it. And like when you really like be in tune with like your true purpose, like in your passion and your mission and your drive, like you feel that resonate in your heart. And that was like the breaking point for me. I'm like, yo, like I cannot stay in DC and continue being the girls. Like that's not the life goal. And that's nothing wrong with that. But like it's just so much more. So let me go back and finish my degree and get back on this life path of like overall slayage in the world. You know what I'm saying?
Overall slayage.
Yes.
I love that.
Screaming. Overall slayage in the world. Screaming.
So, wow. We've come full circle.
Yeah.
You've had 3, 4, 5 identity crises at this point.
Screaming.
We'll just say 3. You're now literally in this moment at that next level. You made that decision to leave DC. You finish your degree. What is I'll give you 3. What are the top 3 lessons you're carrying with you into your next seasons? Because obviously we talked about cycles and God, ordering our steps and making sure that we don't go too far off the path to ensure that you don't get into a continuous cycle of identity crisis. It sounds like you got it. You've learned the lessons. It took a few times, but we learned them.
Okay.
What are the top 3 lessons that you're holding on to so that your next phases and whatever phase comes in the near future are fulfilling and they're not a part of that cycle?
Yes. One thing that's very important that somebody told me probably about 7 or 8 years ago was that you have to know what is your yes, and you have to know what is your no.
That's good.
And like when you get into every new cycle or phase of life and stuff, it's a new space. If you move to a new city like LA, you're not going to know what your yes is in regards to everything. But I just lived in DC for 7 years, so I know, I know for me, yes, private landlord, no big ass condo. Like, I know, yes, we can go out to the club, and no, we're not going to the after hours. Yes, this, but no that, spiritually, or yes, this financially, or no that, in regards to wasting money. Yes, this in regards to fish and healthy dietary choices. No to being outside all night long, eating nonsense and pizza and junk food. So I feel like that's something that has really helped me make better decisions and just stay in tune with my identity and myself and my decision making and what God has for me, because it helps you not stray too far off from the path when you kind of sort of know what is your yes and what is your no. And when you don't know that, that's actually very dangerous. So it's okay to understand that, and it's okay to give yourself the grace, but it's also nice to be aware and alert of that.
Yeah.
Another thing that I would say would be just, if I could say 3 things. My yes and my no.
Or 2.
2. I definitely want to give 3. How you understanding that it's okay to, while you go through your transitions and phases of life, it's okay to feel the need to have that expectation to still show up. That is real, you know what I'm saying? And that's almost realistic. Every single mom know that time when you still, my mom, we didn't struggle and we didn't really have a hard life, because I know my mom worked her ass off and she still put on that soldier face. Even to this day, my mom, she don't let me know about certain stuff, and she'll try to not let me be knowledgeable because she a mom and she got to handle it. So I carried that same mantra as a mentor to a lot of my mentees. When I was at Del State and we would have certain people in Limitless not have nowhere to live for a semester, or we have a fashion show over the summer and you need a place to stay, or you don't know how you should deal with a significant other, and I'm okay, how can I tap in? How can I help? How can I be a resource? And even if I still got to go through and go to the financial aid building and pay my bill, or I'm splitting my last box of hamburger helper with you, and you don't know I don't got no food for tomorrow. It's okay for me to feel and put and lean into that while still giving myself the grace to know if I don't have it all together behind that mask, it's okay for myself to feel and know that and be aware of that as well. So it's okay to be a Renaissance person and to be a champion, because that's what a lot of people have in them. But it's okay, everybody got down days, or everybody got days where you're not gonna be able to punch all the way in or clock all the way in from a professional standpoint. But at least clear the inbox. Like at least clear the inbox. Like, that part. So that would be number 2. And then number 3, as far as like identity and stuff, like, instinct in your gut and like discernment is really a thing. Mm-hmm. So like the older I got, the discernment, like it just, the needle like starts like moving. Like, and it's so crazy because it's like now at like 30, moving on 31 in a couple months. I can't really believe I'm saying that. God is so good. Yeah. But being 31 in a couple months is like the discernment be on point. So it's like now, like when it comes to like when I moved to DC and I was first hanging out with these set of girls, and then I started hanging out with these girls, and then the outside girls, and then the bougie girls, and the gentrified girls, and the ghetto girls, and the modeling girls. Like, and we went to college already, so like, we literally was taught how to code switch. Yeah. But like when your discernment kicks into that, then it's not just statistical, and it's like, okay, I'm judging you based off of what I think. It's like in your spirit, in your gut, like, all right, these is good people, this is not good people, this is an environment I need to be in, this is an environment I don't need to be in, like, this is how I should make this decision, or I feel like if I make this decision, it might not be the strongest. So like having that discernment, like, and really being in tune with like whoever your spiritual, guider is, and for me it's Jesus, but really having that space to know, like, all right, like, thank you for giving me like that feeling and that understanding that like I am standing firm where I'm at, and I'm good for that. So like if I tell you about something and I get a feeling that like I was Gucci about telling you about something, I'm cool with telling you about something.
I love it. What is your yes and your no? When you first said that, I'm like, yes, I feel like I have it in my head. I need to make it real plain and clear. What is your yes and your no? How are you showing up and listening to your gut and your discernment? Yeah. I love it. As we wrap up, which I'm sad about. One thing that the classmates know is I always give homework based on whatever the topic is, whatever the takeaways are. Thinking about your journey, your authenticity, your candor, what you've shared, for anyone that may be going through in the middle of an identity crisis right now, or people who are like, do I need to ask myself if I'm in an identity crisis? What would be your homework to them? What do you want them to do?
So, homework, bam. So,
bam.
When I really started becoming conscious about like spiritual growth, and I was like, all right, Babatunde, you need to get your spiritual life together. Like, you gotta do something here. It's so cliche and it's so casual to be like, what would Jesus do?
It is.
But
it's so real.
It's so real. Yeah. So like from an identity standpoint, I wouldn't say that, because everybody's identity is not completely wrapped up in a complete reflection of the Lord Jesus Christ, even though like that's an aspiration. Mm-hmm. But from an identity standpoint, for as far as a person of self, what would insert your name do? And literally, like, that's like it's not a thing that you do in the mirror, but it's a thing that you apply to every decision of your life. Mm-hmm. So, like, when I'm out on U Street in DC and, like, excuse my language, get into a brawl, I immediately think in my head, like, oh, what would I do? Like, I need to be prepared. But, like, that's an identity thing, because, like, you need to be assured of how you would show up or how you would make a decision in every single aspect or like, every part of your life. So, like, literally, if you... And this has happened to me before. If you get pulled into a threesome, what you gonna do? Like, you don't have time to, like, you need to know, like, how to make decisions on the spot. Like, and we get taught, like, that efficiency in college, but, like, from an internal, like, decision-making identity standpoint, what you gonna do real quick? Like, when it's like, oh, in DC, somebody passed you a bag of Coke. Like,
what are you gonna do?
What you gonna do? Yeah. Without being offensive or like being shady or whatever the case may be, and still being able to hold your ground and knowing what your yes is and what your no is. Or like when somebody pull you into a back room and they try to sexually assault you, what you gonna do? How do you operate? How do you make decisions? Like when somebody try to tell you like, oh, I want you to join this occult. Like, is this even real right now? Like, let me put my cross back on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where am I? And you get into these situations where, like, you don't know. And it's like, you just got to always ask yourself, like, what would I do in these situations? And that's always, like, a reoccurring question, so that you affirm about yourself, you affirm about your decisions, you affirm about your own identity, and you affirm and feel safe in that. You know, it really can sit in that, because when you can, then it's like you're not shaking, you're not stirred, you're not bending, you're not twisting, you're not making alternative decisions based off of other people, unless you like compromising. But like even then, it's still like a affirmity in who you are as a person. Wow. So what would Jay do?
Right.
What would you do?
What would you do? Writing it down.
You go to Starbucks and the drive-through closed. What would you do? You about to throw a tantrum and start throwing the $5. Oh my God! Like what? Like how old are we? Like what would you do?
That is so good. You know, I don't think
go to Dunkin'.
Not go to Dunkin'. Maybe That is such a good point because therapy revealed to me having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And something as simple as you drive up to Starbucks, you really want Starbucks, it's closed. Am I throwing a tantrum? Or am I going to say, well, darn, I am going to go to Dunkin'. Is that a part of my identity? It absolutely is. Like, are you the temper tantrum thrower? Or are you the person that's going to say, oh, well, I found something else. I don't think we sit and realize that those small decisions make up who we are that then spill over into those larger decisions. Like, what you going to do when you get fired on the spot at a job? Are you
big career changes start happening. Big relationships start coming around. Big affiliations start changing, and you start changing. And this is the thing, the last part. People go through life and don't realize when you go through these spaces, you can literally turn over your shoulder and be looking at like a ghost or like somebody who used to be you. Like, dang, like I used to be like a drag queen, or I used to be like in a Greek letter organization. Like, your life can change as much as you want it to change. So like with that responsibility, you got to make sure that like you making the right decisions and how you grow and like in a beautiful fashion become the person that you is intended to be. And whoever that is, that's beautiful for everybody, you know, but just being sure that you are affirming that, you know.
I love that. We're going to end it right there. I don't need to add another thing right there. Not at all. Well, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me. I want to cry.
So stop. Thank you for gracing the podcast couch, I'm going to call it, being my first guest on this here YouTube. My classmates know. We're getting used to it.
Yes.
But you really embodied why this podcast exists. The candor, the authenticity. I share a lot of my story. You brought that. And so I'm hopeful that it helps some of anybody. Well, if it's just one person, I am hopeful. Y'all have your homework. I'm going to make sure that all your socials are somewhere on the screen. They'll be listed. Is there anything you want to promote or plug before we head out?
Promote or plug. I am in the middle of a complete rebrand. So with the identity space, it is beautiful to see myself grow professionally over the years. When I first got into the game, I was like, well, I'm gonna be a stylist and I'm gonna be a chef. And I was like, I'm gonna be an event manager. And hospitality management and, fashion sustainability and management is kind of sort of where my bread and butter has been as of late. So really developing that out with my content space and really seeing what that looks like as a hospitality and tourism, brand manager and influencer. And in the same spaces with fashion and style as a whole. I've gotten the professional development bug in the workspace as of recently. So right now I'm an executive assistant and I really have leaned into, all of the experience that I've gotten from other people who have assisted me professionally, over the years to really get a strong skill set. And in essence, helping push that back into the community. So helping people, specifically people of color, develop resumes, develop LinkedIn's, develop cover letters, develop strong professional brands, from an aesthetic point and from a relationship point to be able to bust through, in essence how I did, bust through every professional door, whether or not you got the receipts to prove it, but you got the receipts to get up in there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, well, make sure y'all follow Babatunde, Obaba, as he's been called in the Del State streets. Again, we'll make sure we have your ads, all the things on the screen, linked below. Y'all know how the YouTube works. And obviously, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever the case, we'll link it in the show notes.
Thank you.
We're going to get out of here, y'all. Thank you so much again for joining me.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for my classmates. Y'all know why this podcast exists. I hope you learned something new or gained some sort of new insight. And I'll see you next week. Bye. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, give us a follow at School of Life Podcast on Instagram and be sure to follow me at _Miss J. That's _MISSJAYE.
Gotta pay these student loans. That's adults with the score doing the most. That's adulting, moving out of mom's house. That's adulting, but it's all gonna work out. That's adulting. I need a legal side hustle. That's adulting, 'cause these bills got me in trouble.